for our acts. The sea can be deep for our diving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery with Dion Miller. This is a Trudging Together podcast. Welcome, everybody. We have a great speaker tonight, and I'd like to welcome everyone. We are doing something a little bit different here at Trudging Together, so it may sound a little bit different. But what we've done is we've opened it up to be able to accept phone calls also. So if it doesn't sound like it normally does, that would be why. So, but shouldn't sound too much different. The great thing about it is now we get to open it up to the United States. So now we can take phone calls and have guests all over the United States instead of just bringing them into studio. Without further ado here, let's get to our first guest. Today. Her name is Ashley, and I actually met her through the Hornbuckle Foundation, and she is a fellow recovery coach. Welcome, Ashley, to Raw Recovery with Dion.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Certainly. We appreciate you being on the show and taking your time to tell your story and your experience. So why don't we go ahead and jump right on into Ashley's story?
Yeah, all right. Well, it's a doozy. I'll kind of do a little quick where I'm at now. I am about a little under a year and a half sober, and I've been a recovery coach for about 5 months.
Okay.
And basically what got me here is my past. It's a little dicey. So I'll go ahead and start off with when the drinking and all that began.
Okay.
Back, I would probably say freshman year is when I had experienced alcohol. I guess like 8th grade, 9th grade.
Okay.
And it was me and my sister and my mom and my stepfather, and my mom always struggled with alcohol and pills. So
okay.
That has just been a part of our life for so long. And around that time in high school, it was just more like, it wasn't an every weekend, every day kind of a drink. We just drank with friends here and there, typical high school stuff.
Sure.
It wasn't until about sophomore year, my sister and I moved back Colorado from Indiana to live with my dad, and we had just kind of a lot more freedom, I guess. He was recently divorced from our first stepmom and was dating our now stepmom.
Okay.
And my sister and I, in sophomore, junior year, we just kind of had a lot more freedom than the average high schooler.
Okay.
So I got to kind of just do whatever I wanted. I started drinking and smoking weed, and it just, in Arvada and where I went to school, just was kind of like such a normal thing. You would even go get slushies and put some alcohol in it and
Sure.
drink it at school. Like, it wasn't, I don't know, it just was such a normal thing. So
yeah, that gives I think that gives the name Super Big Gulp a different meaning.
yeah, just a little bit. But thankfully, all that sugar covers up the smell of alcohol really well.
These are little tricks that we know.
Mm-hmm. And, I always had older friends. They were like my brother's friends, who was like 3-4 years older than me.
Okay.
So I always kind of just had that access to alcohol. Or, we would drink my dad's and fill it up with water and put it back in the freezer. Such idiots.
Yep.
His big old bottle of Grey Goose froze over one day. And I don't know what happened to it. Yeah.
How did my alcohol freeze over?
Yeah, right? I'm like, oh, it's a mystery. I don't know. Yeah, so it was definitely us. And that was just kind of where I realized, it almost felt like life just didn't really have consequences. I was drinking on school night, and the next morning, going to school hungover, and I wasn't going to bed till like 4, and then having to wake up at 6, and it felt out of control even then. But I didn't really know at all that I had a problem or struggled with it, because it just seemed normal as well.
Okay.
So that was in Nevada. We moved a lot. Junior year, around 2006-07, we moved up to Highlands Ranch, or down to Highlands Ranch, Nevada. And
Okay.
I was still driving every day from Highlands Ranch to go to my school in Nevada.
Okay.
And that's when I realized, as a junior, I was like, oh, these rides are so much better stoned. And, early morning, driving, picking up my friend, going to school, just high as hell. And same with driving back. And I just thank God I didn't cause any accidents then. But I did end up getting my first DUI my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And, I had drank a little at a party. Wasn't a lot, but it was enough. I was literally less than a minute away from my house.
Okay.
And I had my girlfriend with me in the car, and she was pretty lit because she wasn't driving.
Sure.
And I got pulled over for a busted tail light, and the cops smelled alcohol. And I ended up getting my first DUI that day, or that night. And I blew a .043, but I was 17. So
Yeah.
had no business to be drinking and driving.
Yep. Laws are different for people underage.
Yeah, just a little bit. So it was like right around Mother's Day, and my dad and my stepmom were actually out of town. And at this point, my mom was in Nebraska, so
Ruh-roh.
we lived in Nebraska. So we were just living with my dad and stepmom.
Okay.
And that was the absolute most terrifying thing ever, was to tell them, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
When they came back, we decided, we get a lawyer, and they would front the bill, but I had to pay them back everything. And with that, I ended up, having to do classes, get the breathalyzer, or, lost my license for 3 months, kind of that general stuff.
Yes.
And then by the time we went to court, I never even saw the judge. He got it knocked down to 1-point speeding ticket.
Okay.
So for me, other than losing my license and then having to give my parents money every month, I didn't really have any repercussions.
Yeah, there wasn't. Losing your license for 3 months really isn't that big of a deal.
No, and it sucked at that time because, my friends were in Nevada. So
Okay.
here I am, senior year, going to Highlands Ranch High School and not knowing anyone and being so far away from what I knew. It did kind of suck, but it made me so grounded. I ended up, my freshman year, I got a 1.0 for my GPA.
Yes.
I graduated high school with a 3.4 or something like that.
Okay.
So it ended up doing great things for me in that. But
Sure.
repercussion-wise, I just kind of oh, that was nice, got away with it. Fast forward to probably, I think I was 22 at this point.
Okay.
And drinking became pretty regular. I was in an unhealthy relationship, and we ended up we broke up, and I just kind of made up for lost time and drank a lot. And then I got my second DUI.
Okay.
It's so sad, but it's literally all blurred together. I want to say around 23 years old. I was working at a bar downtown, and afterwards we all went out for a friend's going away. I got wasted. I had plans to stay at a friend's house, but they told me I couldn't, so I was like, I could just drive home. And speeding down I-25, heading down south, cop finally pulls me over, and he says to me, you were going so fast, I had trouble catching you.
Wow.
And I didn't know my little Ford Escape went that fast, because usually once it goes about a little over 80, it would start rattling. So clearly I was going so fast that I was just like not even noticing that.
Wow.
And yeah, it was intense. And I got full on hit with a DUI.
Yeah.
Now, I did not want to tell my dad and stepmom, not because, I'd get in trouble or whatever. It was more, I couldn't handle the disappointment that they felt the first time.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to let them down again. So I only ended up telling my sister and my mom and my older brother, because he had to send me some money. And I ended up kind of just handling it on my own in a way, with, support from those three. But it was a full-on DUI. I hired the same lawyer, and he was kind of like, well, I'm not going to, get you out of this again.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're just going to keep making this mistake. So I paid him the same amount of money, and he did not do as much for me this time as he did the first time, which I totally get and I respect. In the moment, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, at the time, we don't understand, but you didn't realize that he was doing you a favor by doing that.
Exactly. Yeah, and then, everything else, I got pretty hit hard with it. I was living with my sister at this point, and I didn't have my license, and she was on me. She's like, you are not driving. So she really made sure. And, when I was staying with her, I was drinking so much that I was hiding bottles in my room so I'd have to throw them away.
Sure.
And then I would throw it away when everyone would leave or whatever. And they weren't just like pints. They were fifths.
They were handles.
Bottles.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was the cheapest vodka. Oh, goodness. I get chills thinking about it now. And she really started to notice, and she's always been the one to call me out on my bullshit. And she knows me better than literally anyone. So she kind of laid down the law with me, and I got sober. And I was sober for a good amount of time. Well, like 2-3 months, which for me, that was a lot.
That's a good amount of time, considering law was just laid down. We usually have trouble with that, but it's usually the thing that helps us the most.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like you said, you never realize it in the moment.
Exactly.
In the moment, it's like, oh my gosh, stop being a bitch and understand what I'm going through, And to this day, I'm just so thankful for all of her realness that she kind of spit my way. But
tough love.
Yeah, exactly. And I was 22, 23, like I said, and I was sober now, and I was able to go out to the bars with my friends and not drink, and it was amazing, actually. I really loved it. And I had the interlock in my car, so I couldn't if I wanted to. And then I met my probation officer, and I'm not entirely sure how it came up, but he was like, I can text you when you're going to get your UAs, so that way you know when it's going to happen.
Oh, no.
And yeah, in like a roundabout way, he ended up just giving me an out to be able to drink and not have to worry about it coming up on my little P-test or whatever it's called. So, UA. So then I started drinking and got into another relationship, and that kind of went south again, another 2 years. Wasted on a man, and I was just kind of over it. And when we broke up, I was like, I just moved into an apartment by myself. It was the first time I was alone by myself, and the freedom that I felt to be able to just be the ugly me was liberating. I can come home and drink right away, and it's not an issue. I don't have to hide all my bottles finally. I can leave them out, and it was just this freedom that, in hindsight, I was so not ready for.
No.
And I started drinking a lot, and I was working a lot too. I was a nanny and a bartender, and when I was nannying, of course, I wasn't drinking, but behind the bar, I was drinking a lot.
Sure.
And it's what us bartenders do. And it's been, something at that point, I had already done it for like 7 years.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, bartender was probably the best job that I ever had.
Right?
I didn't have it for very long, though.
Exactly. And I'm like, ooh, free booze.
Yeah.
All right. And, oh, my goodness, I don't know how I ever was able to be as fast as I was as a bartender when I was so loaded all the time. And even at this point, I still had interlock in my phone or in my car, and I would just know to, like, take the shots right when I get there. And then by the time I leave, it would be calmed down, and I'd be able to drive. It's just the thinking behind that's so crazy. So at this point, I was pretty lost. I was living by myself for about a year, and then my sister decided that her and her husband, and then she just had my nephew, they were going to move to Arizona in Tucson for a job opportunity. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Like, I want to go. I'm already paying like $10.50 in rent for this like ghetto apartment.
Yeah.
I'm working 2 jobs, 7 days a week. I was over it. So a couple months after that, I followed her out to Tucson. I got an apartment, again, living by myself. This time, it was honestly like my world just imploded. My ex ended up getting a girl pregnant that he told me were just friends, which we all know that's a lie. Yeah. And even though I was, far away from him, I didn't know how to cope and handle those feelings except for to numb them. And I drink a lot. And at this point, it's Arizona. So I'm picking up booze from gas stations.
Yep.
Anywhere, it's all around you. And I really started to spiral. And I was finishing bottles, probably a little over a half of a bottle each night. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get a job. I could have, but I didn't go out and look, even though I told everyone I was. And I was just really having a hard time adjusting to my area.
Yeah.
I finally ended up getting a job. My dad loaned me some money to kind of get me on my feet, and I was, I think, able to pay him back. I want to say I did, but who knows at this point? I still owe money for everything.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to continue paying my mom back. It's just, I don't know that it ends.
For the rest of your life, right? So I'm like, I've got to get famous so I can buy you guys stuff finally. So
that's
you
right.
can stop taking care of me. But yeah, it was rough. And, especially at that age, I was 26, and, you're so dependent on all these people because I was just so lost in my own head. Mm-hmm. And I never knew how to handle my own emotions. I always kept everything locked up. I was everyone else's therapist. I was a bartender.
That's right.
You tell me your problems, and I'll tell you how to fix them. But I cannot tell myself how to do it.
And even while we're drinking, we're really good at giving other people advice.
Oh, I tell you, I was like Dr. Phil when I was drunk. I was so good. Oh, gosh, yeah. Or at least I thought I was. I probably made no sense, but
Certainly.
Yeah. So at that point, I had got a job and everything, and then my friend wanted to come out and visit me. And I went to pick her up in Phoenix, and we just ended up staying up there. And we went on this saltwater river float where you just kind of float down this massive river. And we were drinking. I, for me and my tolerance, didn't feel like we were drinking a lot. Now, at this point, I'm in Arizona where there's not a lot of elevation. Yeah. So, that change is huge. I could drink like a fish out there, and it barely affected me. And same with my friends. So we ended up just drinking a lot when it felt like we weren't really drinking much. Yeah. Anyhow, we're going down the river. It's over. We're getting ready to leave. At this point, I felt totally fine. And because it takes about an hour to do the whole thing, and I'm driving around. We're on a cliff. It's a little mountainy area, a little windy. And I was going left around this corner, and my wheel touched. I was driving on the white line around the corner. Ooh. And that's why I got pulled over. Yeah. And at this point, I just knew, I was like, I'm fucked. Like, here we go, number 3.
Yep.
Sure enough, yeah, it was number 3. And did the whole booking and everything. And at this point, all I can remember is Arizona is a no tolerance law or state.
Yeah.
So I just assumed at that point I was going to jail, or I'm going to be going to jail.
Yeah. That's what it looks like.
Thankfully, I didn't go that day, but coming back and having to tell my sister and my parents and everything, and at this point, I had already, a couple of years earlier, told my parents about the second DUI, and they were, just as unhappy as you would imagine.
Sure.
And so now I'm on number 3.
Yep.
And
something's got to give at some point here.
Yeah, honestly. And I came back and my sister's like, get your shit together. Like, you have to. And so I got sober, and I enrolled in cosmetology school, something I'd wanted to do since I was 18.
Okay.
And I'm finally doing it. And I did. I became sober, and I was probably the best version of myself I've ever been.
That's so
I was
cool.
flourishing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 8 months in. And then 8 months in, my best friend back home dies. And he died from, he had sleeping pills, he had taken sleeping pills, and then, like, while he was drinking.
Yeah.
And they called it an accidental overdose, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But that was really hard for me to handle. And it's like, oh, your best friend dies from alcohol. Let's start drinking again.
Yeah.
I
As
don't
an
know the logic
alcoholic,
behind
I
it.
understand. I get that. I so
Yeah.
get that. I understand that. So.
My world was shaken to the core again, and I had told him so many times, like, while I was getting sober, that you need to do this. It's amazing. You'll love it. Because he struggled with drinking as well, and it just went south for him. So I started drinking, and I was at this point in, like, my 3rd real relationship I've ever had, and it was, like, the most real one I've ever had, too. And when we ended up breaking up, again, shattered my world after about 2.5 years, and
Okay.
on and off, back and forth. And so my sister and her little family ended up moving back to Colorado, and I was like, well, I don't have anything else here. I might as well move back. And mind you, that whole time, I'm just drinking a lot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the thing in Tucson. There's not much to do out there, so there's always a bar, and you know how that goes. And yeah, I moved back to Colorado, moved back in with my dad and my stepmom, and my sister, my brother-in-law, my nephew, and then my younger sister. We all lived in a house together. Thank God. It was a big enough house, so we weren't, like, on top of each other, but I worked opposite schedules. I was a bartender still. I was working at a nice, high-class restaurant, and they all had day jobs. So by the time they left in the morning, I was just getting up. You know, by the time they got home, I was already gone.
Okay.
And I thought I was doing responsible things by, you know, I was drinking a lot there at work because that's what you do. And I would, for the most part, get an Uber or have a friend. If a friend wasn't drinking, we would go back to her place, and there was just one girl, and she would let me stay there.
Okay.
There were a couple nights that I drove home, but I wasn't, like, wasted. But, I mean, I did drive drunk.
Yeah.
So it tends to be a theme, heartbreak and then drunk driving.
Yeah.
So August 23rd of 2018, I was leaving work. It was such a shitty day, and I was there early to help out, and all these little things just kind of piled on, and I was like, screw this. So the bartender I was serving, he was just making me drink back, and then when I was done, I wanted to go over to my friend's house. So I had my phone in my lap with the maps pulled up.
Okay.
And I was on I-25. And I honestly can't remember this part. I felt like I was totally sober.
Yeah.
I downed like 6 chicken tenders, like right before I started driving. Because that sobers you up within minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I truly felt like I was okay, and I had my phone in my lap, and I have a feeling I was trying to text my ex back home something, or I was looking at my maps. Honestly, I can't remember, but I was looking down, and it really was a split second. I look down, I look up, and the car in front of me slammed on the brakes.
Okay.
And I remember thinking to myself before that happened, oh, wow, the highway's pretty empty at 11 o'clock at night. And so I knew that I could hop over to the next lane.
Uh-huh.
So I did. I got into the left lane, the far left lane, and I ended up just overcorrecting, and I went all the way and I hit the guardrail.
Ouch.
And at this moment, it's the most surreal moment, and it stands out amongst everything else the most because my rear view mirror actually fell, and I could see, like, I made eye contact with myself.
Yeah.
And kind of like while my car is mid-air, because I'm flipping at this point, I made eye contact with myself and I said, this is it. This is where you die.
Yep. It's over.
And it honestly was just, I felt at peace. I felt calm. I didn't scream. It was just kind of numb. It felt like a movie. And my car ended up flipping about 5 times on the highway.
Wow.
Thankfully, no one else was involved. I didn't hit anyone. No one was in my car. Thank God.
Thank God.
I honestly don't know how I would live with myself after that. The ambulance came, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, it's so fast. And they had a jaws of life me out of my car because it was so beat up. And they said it took like over 20 minutes to get the door off.
Wow.
So they could get me out. And I was laying on the stretcher. And at that point, I pretty much knew that, I was paralyzed. I didn't know to what extent, but I knew my legs were not moving. I was still awake. I was awake for the whole thing.
Okay.
And I remember at one point thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I really hope they don't know that I've been drinking. And I could hear one of the paramedics in the car, and they were like, do you think she was drinking? Does it smell like booze? And they were like, no, we can't smell anything on her. And while I'm laying next to my car, paralyzed after I just flipped it in a huge accident, I'm like relishing in the fact that I'm not going to get busted for drinking and driving again. And it's just such twisted mind thought.
Yeah, and I laugh, but only because I understand that it's amazing what goes through our minds at certain times.
Yeah, and like the justification of, ooh, I'm going to be, I'm not going to get caught. And then I remember thinking, oh, I really hope they don't find any shooters in my car, because that was my thing. I always had shooters because they're easy to hide, they're easy to take, da-da-da. So I'm thinking all this stuff of like, okay, they're not going to catch me for a DUI. I'm just hurt. And when I'm in the hospital and I'm coming to, at this point, I have a tube down my throat and I can't talk at all.
Nope.
And I had that in for about 3 or 4 days. And I can't move my arms even, nothing. So they had to like make a little board with like the alphabet on it. And I would have to they would go down a row and I'd have to nod when they get to the letter I wanted.
Yep.
To make the sentence. And the first question I asked was, did I hurt anyone? And thankfully that was no. And then I kept asking if I was paralyzed and no one would tell me for about 2 days. It was awful. Finally, I found that out, that I was considered a quadriplegic. So I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I can move my arms, but my fingers, my hands have no movement whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then no legs. Obviously, can't move my legs or anything. And I don't have control over my trunk or bladder. So if I'm sitting on the edge of a bed, I look like a drunk person. I'm like wibbly wobbly. I'm all over the place. So, yeah, it was such a bittersweet moment for me because all my family's there and everyone's coming in. You can only have like 2 or 3 people in a room at a time, and it's just so many people coming in after another. And I'm like, wow, I really loved, and I could have lost all of this.
Yep.
But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get a DUI. I know it. Mm-hmm. I'm getting that 4th DUI.
my family's going to find out. There's no way they're not doing a blood test on me. And sure enough, they, I think it was like the second day, and I didn't want to ask at all because
certainly you're not going to ask that.
Yeah, I don't want to like rat myself out if I didn't need to. And
Exactly.
I mean, every minute of every day, I'm semi-worried about the paralyzing, not being able to be who I was before, but the majority of the time I was thinking, am I going to get arrested? When is a cop? Every person that came in I thought was going to be a cop.
Sure.
And it ends up, they did do my blood test, and I was so incredibly high. I honestly can't even remember it, but it was probably like a 0.3 something,
Ooh.
0.2 something. It was really high.
Yeah, that's like 4 or 5 times the legal limit.
Yeah. And they were saying that, like, this is the point where most people would need to get, like, their stomach pumped.
Yeah.
And I felt fine.
Yeah.
So they did come out with that, and I felt the disappointment. And I was disappointed and pissed at myself. And then they said, the cops, they're not going to press charges or do anything because they thought you were going to die.
Yep.
So they didn't even worry about it.
Yep.
That was the last day that I drank. So my sobriety date, even though the accident was the 23rd, I say my first day, real day of recovery is August 24th.
Okay.
And
That's
after that moment,
that's the
I
day
just-
you made the decision. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm going to Craig Rehab, and I'm, first off, so confused. I had no clue Craig Rehab was even a thing here in Colorado, even though it's in the top 10 of the biggest spinal cord injury hospitals in the nation.
Yep.
And at this point, I kind of decide that, I'm stuck in a chair now. I will never be able to, like, for the most part, probably walk again, use the restroom by myself. I need help with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I have a daily reminder of what would happen to me if I drink again.
Yep.
And so it's kind of easy for me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I'm 30 now. I turned 30 while I was in Craig Hospital. I've lived a wild, very wild life leading up to that. And so now my main focus is to help people who are struggling, whether it's drugs and alcohol or even people at Craig. I'm a volunteer there, and I'm there about 2 to 3 times a week, and I talk to the new people that come in that are quadriplegics. I teach the ladies how to apply makeup with no hands.
Mm-hmm.
I teach them how to go grocery shopping. It's been about a year and a half since the accident, and I have lived by myself on my own since October.
Okay.
Yeah, which is like not normal, I guess.
No, it's not.
I do have
That's
a caretaker.
Okay.
Yeah. I do have a caretaker. She comes 2 hours in the morning, 2 to 3 at night, just to kind of help get me up and all that. But for the most part, I live my days completely independent. I do my own grocery shopping, cooking, all of that. So now I just kind of pass it on to other quads that are struggling with it. And then my going home was awful. I had to live with my dad and stepmom and everyone, and I had to take over their master bedroom, and because there was only one on the main floor that I could get to.
Okay.
And my family really struggled with it. I didn't just change my life that night. I changed all of theirs. I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters, all from different marriages, but we're all just as close.
Yes.
And I really got to see like how much my actions that night affected everyone around me. And it's something that to this day we're all still working on. It's not easy we can't all just go over to one of their houses and just like have a normal hangout, get together.
Have game night or something.
Yeah, it's like, how's Ashley going to get there? How are we going to get her in the house? Is she going to be able to get in the house? We have to have strong guys to be able to lift her chair up, and
Sure.
nothing is the same, and my stepmom and my dad have been my absolute rock through this whole thing, and
That's
my
fantastic.
older sister, Deborah.
Yeah.
They've done everything in their power to full on support me. But at the end of the day, emotionally, like my sister and my stepmom, when I first got home, they had so much hate in their heart for me, and they've admitted it, and I absolutely understand it.
Right. Yeah.
Here I am, fucking up again, doing the Ashley thing, not considering anyone else, being so selfish, and changing everyone's life. And at that moment, even when I got home from rehab and I accepted the fact that I was changing, and I had a recovery coach at this point,
Okay.
for about a month, and I'm still just being a little shithead, not understanding that I'm thinking, like, why aren't you guys, like, proud of me and, like, all the stuff that I've done so far? Because I came so far in 3 months, and
Yeah.
I did all this work, and I'm like, what more do you want? But they didn't see the inside of me changing.
That's right.
And that's, kind of where it all begins. You got to work on the inside. And so at that point, that's when I got my therapist. She is a drug and alcohol therapist.
Okay.
And then I met my recovery coach. And the first meeting with my recovery coach, when we started talking, it was just inspiration at first sight. I had no clue what a recovery coach was. It made no sense. I was just doing it to appease my family.
Yep.
And because I thought I didn't need AA. I don't need anything. I got it. I'm good. I can't drink. That's fine. That's what it is. And then, of course, I realized, oh, wait, I really do need this.
Yep.
And so I met her, and from the first day we started talking, she's like, I could see you become a recovery coach.
Yep.
And it was like, boom, okay, that's a goal. I'm going to hit that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I ended up taking the classes, and now I'm certified recovery coach. I still want to get, like, my national credentials and all that, so I can meet and talk with people outside of Colorado, which is huge because I kind of look at it as dual recovery for me. I'm recovering from a spinal cord injury.
Yep. And
the mental and the physical stuff that goes along with that, but also doing it all without my crutch of alcohol.
Yep.
That I've had for the past 12 years. So it really was a dual recovery, and I had to do so much for one and so much for the other. And so my goal is to be able to help people who are dealing with a spinal cord injury, and whether they become addicted to the opioids because they're fed it like candy in hospitals.
Yes. Yeah.
Or, they pick up drinking more because it numbs the nerve pain that they feel throughout the day. And I mean,
Or they
it's
start,
honestly
or
astonishing.
even more dangerous, they start mixing the two.
Absolutely. And, we're on meds. I've never met a person in here that isn't on at least one or two, kind of a medication. And from the beginning, I did like a month of having opioids, but they just messed my stomach up. Thank God I did not like the feeling.
Good.
But I was scared of becoming addicted because of my addictive personality, but then seeing it with my mom. So I cut those out right away, but not a lot of people can. And it's the only way they feel some sense of, relief.
Yeah. Or normalcy.
Yeah. I mean, being in a wheelchair, and especially for me, in order for me to be independent, I have to be in a power wheelchair, which the looks that I get all day, every day, because I take public transportation and stuff, people just look at me and they see my face and everything, and I look normal, and I don't look disabled, which is so frustrating.
Yeah.
But people just don't understand that just because you can't tell, and unless you really look at my hands, you wouldn't be able to tell that I don't have function of them. So it just looks like this, like, normal girl rolling around in a chair. It makes no sense. So, I mean, man, if I could just down a couple shots of vodka, I would not give a shit what people said when I was, riding on a bus. Like, I wouldn't care what anybody had to think about because I would be drunk. But again, it's that constant reminder of I just have to look down and see my legs and know that I'm never going to walk again because of alcohol and my choices with it. You know, it was my fault, obviously, but yeah. So
it is and it isn't.
That's kind of my story.
I mean, we got to take responsibility for our actions, but the disease
100%.
certainly isn't your fault. But I mean, I gotta say, you know, I'm very proud of you for being able to stand up after that. I mean, a year and a half is when it comes down to it, that's not very long for the situation you're in. So great job, Ashley. You're a
Thank
miracle.
you. You know, it's honestly my biggest motivation has been my family. You know, I've let them down for so long, and I've been in this group for so long, and they still love me. And you know, after 3 DUIs and doing a whole bunch of stupid shit and just being wild Ashley, you know, they still stood by me. And now with this, it's like, holy cow, I've changed everyone's life. You know, my nephew, he's 6, and it's like, I'm not auntie like I was before. And I just, at the end of the day, want them to be proud and know that I'm not taking my second chance at life for granted. You know, I own the fact that I drove drunk, beyond drunk. I was wasted, and this is what happened, and I can't change that. Did I want to get in the accident? Absolutely not. You know, it is truly called an accident for a reason. But the big part of it has been owning what I did and what I chose to do and where to go from there. So, yeah, it's been 1 year, 1.5 years, a wild, wild ride. But who I am today and what I've done today is more than I've done in my 30 years here on Earth. So, in the end, this whole thing has truly been a blessing, because I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for this kind of like intervention of, you know, God just saying, wake the hell up.
Yeah.
So
sometimes God needs to step in and put a foot down for us to stop and actually listen. You know, and sometimes it takes something extreme.
He tried 3 other times, and I said, nope. Finally, he's like, you're going to listen now, and woo! Yeah.
So, so for the people listening, and so if we have any females that are looking for recovery coaching, or, you know, other people that might be quadriplegic and would like to talk to somebody else, I will have them reach out to me, and I will give them your contact information. Is that okay?
Absolutely, 100%. You know, the benefit of right now I'm not working, I'm just volunteering, is I have a super flexible schedule, and I can pretty much meet you anywhere, phone calls, any of that. I am here to help, so I would really appreciate that.
That's fantastic. Ashley, I appreciate you taking your time with us today and telling your story. You know, it's amazing that, you know, what it comes down to is, you know, we try and we try and we try, and we think we're doing the right things when we're doing the exact opposite. And sometimes it takes a lot of tries. I had a heart attack when I was 42. That didn't do it. In and out of detoxes 27 times. You know, and sometimes it just takes that one little flip of the switch, or in this case, a pretty big flip of the switch. But what it comes down to is we take what we have, and we take what we did wrong, and we turn it into gold. We turn it into something new, and we turn it into something better. And that's the gift of recovery, is being able to take all of those things that we've done in the past and turn them into gold and turn them into experiences so that we can help other people. So.
Yeah, and actually my sponsor told me, she's like, you know, when you get serious about working the steps and focusing on your recovery, you're going to start having blessings after blessings. And because I told her, I was like, I'm getting all these opportunities that I feel guilty for, because I'm the one that messed up and I did this huge thing, and now I'm getting blessed. And it's just, it was really hard for me to kind of balance out. And she was like, that's the power of recovery.
Yep.
When you really work it and go through it and understand it, things just start happening. Like being on a podcast, I would have never even had this opportunity. And I just listen to them all day, every day. But now be able to tell my story to a wider audience and feel comfortable with it, it's because of recovery and working through it and understanding it. So I think there's so much power in sobriety, and everybody has a story, and I think that's the biggest thing. My story may only touch one other person, but the chain reaction that comes with that is huge. And you may think that, oh, my story's boring. I get that all the time, like, oh, how am I going to follow up the girl in the chair?
Yeah.
But everyone's pain is pain still. Everybody, one person's still going to be able to resonate with your story, even though it's not this like big dramatic thing.
Exactly.
So I think just being comfortable with telling your story and getting it out there is so big. And yeah, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, because I am a talker, if you couldn't tell.
It's good that you're a talker, because speakers need to be. So, all right, Ashley. Well, thank you again for being on the show. And if anybody there would like to get in contact with Ashley, feel free to get in touch with me. You can reach me at trudgingtogether@gmail.com. You can go to trudgingtogether.com, or you can go to trudgingtogether.podbean.com, or Facebook, or all the other stuff I'm on. All right.
Hey, there you go.
All right, everybody, thank you for listening. This has been Dion Miller with Raw Recovery. I love you all. Peace out and have a day.